Hi, I'm Amber and I'm going to do a talk about blue spaces and their effect on well-being. So there's a couple of different areas that I want to look at with you today. The first is what are blue and green spaces, then how nature and particularly blue spaces affects our well-being at different levels or meets our needs at different levels. And then how we're separate from nature and what the effect of this is, and finally just some of the work that the Bay are doing around Morecambe Bay. So what are blue spaces? So blue spaces are any spaces in nature, they could be natural or man-made, that contain water, so rivers, ponds, dams, estuaries, seas, oceans. While green spaces are again natural or man-made, but just spaces that are terrestrial, land-based, so meadows, mountains, forests, parks as well. So Morecambe Bay has some of the most amazing blue and green spaces in the UK. It's got the biggest intertidal mudflats in the UK, really important habitat for wintering birds. It's the confluence point of 4 different rivers: the Wyre, the Lune, the Leven and the Kent. It's got world famous sunsets, so the sunsets around here are incredible, and also views into the Lake District, which are quite spectacular. So just looking at why we need nature, psychologist Abraham Maslow looked at our needs, human needs, in using a hierarchy. So he saw them as at the base of a triangle. We've got our basic needs, so our need for food, water, air, warmth. Nature provides for all of these. So nature processes like soil formation, pollination, and healthy functioning marine and terrestrial ecosystems provide us with food to eat. The oceans give us a huge range of products: fish, oysters. The oceans also give us oxygen. So most of the world's oxygen is produced by the oceans, and actually 20% of all the planet's oxygen is produced by a bacteria, which is more than all the tropical forests of the planet combined. Marine ecosystems such as mangroves, salt marsh, seagrass and sand dunes give us coastal protection from erosion and sea level rise. But they also store carbon for us, which is really important to take carbon out of the atmosphere and reduce the greenhouse effect and climate change. Particularly mangroves, but also salt marsh and seagrass are really important for that, and Morecambe Bay contains a lot of salt marsh and seagrass. Rivers also give us an important security service in their protection that they provide against flooding. So healthy river systems, when the rivers can meander through the landscape, and when they've got a buffer on either side of healthy ecosystems, it slows down floodwaters and prevents flooding at lower places down the river. We also have psychological needs. Our mental well-being influences how we think, how we feel, how we communicate, learn, and how resilient we are during times of stress. Mental and psychological well-being in the UK is a serious issue. We have 1 in 6 people have depression, and depression has been linked to cardiovascular disease and cancer. It's also associated with a number of other mental health conditions like anxiety, loneliness and stress. It also makes chronic illnesses worse, where good mental well-being is linked to being healthier, being more physical, and living a longer life. Maslow defined our psychological needs as our need for belonging and love, our need for self-esteem and acknowledgement from others, which sort of highlights how important other people are in how good we feel and our mental health and well-being. So we're just looking at green spaces and their effect on us. That researchers found that in urban areas, having access to green space encourages people to spend more time outdoors, which facilitates better ties, stronger ties with our neighbours. So it actually builds community. Green spaces in cities have been found to increase feelings of security and safety in communities, and also increase the amount of time that people spend outdoors, which allows people to develop relationships between neighbours, and so it strengthens neighbourhood ties. This is particularly important in lower income areas where sharing of resources is more important. So having stronger neighbourhood ties is more relied upon in those kind of communities. So it's a really exciting potential that restoring green spaces in urban areas has a sort of dual benefit. So it increases people's well-being, but it also creates green spaces and brings about more nature. Research has also found that green spaces reduce mental tiredness, feelings of stress, and aids in recovery from stress, as well as improving mood via mood-boosting hormones. Historically and culturally, blue spaces have been associated with leisure, lifestyle and relaxation. Morecambe and Blackpool, for example, used to be major holiday destinations during the 19th century. Access to blue spaces are mostly done through physical sports and leisure activities like paddling, wild swimming, walking on the beach and surfing. Recently, wild swimming has had a huge boom in global popularity because of the associated well-being benefits. Research has found that exposure to blue spaces in children results in deeper nature connection for them later in life, and also means that they want to spend more time in nature. One study done on surfers found that they experienced deeper levels of meaning, connection, personal growth and relaxation as a result of surfing and wild swimming. People visit nature for all sorts of reasons: to escape the stress of modern day life, to visit beautiful places and to rest in the tranquility that nature provides. How have we become disconnected from nature, and what is the impact of this? So the amount of natural spaces and the biodiversity within them are declining. In the last 200 years, there's been a huge amount of new urban areas and an influx of people from rural areas into urban areas. This has a number of different effects. It is threatening nature because we need to destroy nature to build urban areas, but also it's resulting in less chances for people to have meaningful encounters in nature. For children growing up in the 21st century, they are living in a world that is very different from the world that their parents knew when they grew up. And we have a tendency to think that the world as it was when we were children is the way it always has been. But this is not correct. So this is called shifting baselines. So it's the idea that we can't actually see the changes that are happening because as children it has already shifted so much just from one generation ago that we think that is normal, but it is not normal. It is already greatly depleted. This is particularly true of the oceans, which people have been interacting with and influencing for millennia. In the 1920s, stories of fishing in the Gulf of California are an example of this. The oceans were described as heaving with whales, porpoises, swordfish, giant tuna, and eagle rays that weighed up to 440 pounds, which is 200 kilograms. Most people living in the 21st century do not witness the ecological processes that sustain us, so that allow us to grow our food, that give us access to clean water and air. We've forgotten how dependent we are on the natural processes and healthy ecosystems. The industrialization of the fishing industry freed fishermen from being dependent on the winds and the tides, but also allowed the development of new fishing methods like trawling. Trawling is when fishermen drag a big net behind the boats, and these nets scoop up everything and anything that get in their path, which can also include the bottom of the sea. The issue with trawling is that it's not selective. It scoops up everything in its path, which includes the eggs of fish and fish at various different sizes and when they're immature. But it could also include species like turtles, porpoises and sharks. They also scoop up the floor of the ocean, destroying the organisms that live on the sea floor, which includes sea fans, sea pens, corals, starfish, and living reefs, which all provide habitat for a much wider range of species. Trawling is not only destructive, but it threatens the marine ecosystems which we depend upon. 17% of the world's protein comes from fish, and 80% of fish stocks have already been fully or overexploited. Another life-sustaining ecological process is the supply of fresh water, which is largely governed by the water cycle. Water is a limited substance on the planet, and in a world that is constantly growing, it is a precious resource. Water molecules go round and round, evaporating, falling as rain, running through the soil, running off and moving into rivers, oceans and water bodies before evaporating and falling as rain again. Climate change impacts the water cycle, which affects our energy production, economies, and health and our agriculture. Climate change does this by speeding up the water cycle, making more clouds, meaning there's a warmer atmosphere, which is causing the glaciers to melt. A warmer atmosphere also means warmer oceans and more CO2 in the atmosphere, which causes higher acid in the oceans because the carbon is being absorbed into them. Ocean acidification causes coral bleaching and stops marine organisms from being able to form their shells and bones. This is a threat to our vital systems. But marine ecosystems do more for us than just meeting our basic requirements. They are a source of inspiration that feed our culture. They inspire our scientists and our artists. They provide tourism benefits that boost local economies. And the ocean also gives us a feeling of the wild in a world that has lost much of its wilderness. The Bay Blueprint for Recovery work around Morecambe Bay and offer people the chance to get outdoors and connect with nature, whilst taking part in activities which include giving, moving, learning, taking notice, and connecting. Understanding well-being in the context of Morecambe Bay allows us to acknowledge the links between our cultures and the environments that we live in. Learning about nature makes us want to protect it. Cleaning up a beach includes being outside, being with other people, walking, giving something back and thinking about marine conservation issues. Collecting data is fun too, and it allows us to spend time with other people, learn something and assist wider conservation efforts. Identifying with an area or place can often facilitate an ethic of care and responsibility. And feeling more connected to nature makes us more likely to take action and act for nature. This ties our health and well-being to the potential for improving the health of local ecosystems. Thank you so much for joining us today, and keep an eye out for our future talks.